The autumn wind blew cold through the mountains of Montana. Danny Watts stood in his small kitchen, stirring a pot of beef stew on the old stove. The cabin was quiet except for the crackle of the fireplace and the soft whistle of wind outside. He liked it this way. After 8 years in the Marines and 2 tours overseas, Danny had learned to love silence. He was 34 years old now. His dark hair was starting to show some gray at the edges. His hands were rough from years of carpentry work. He had built this cabin himself, piece by piece, after leaving the military. It sat alone on 40 acres of forest land, far from the nearest town. Some people called it lonely. Danny called it peace. The stew was almost ready when he heard the knocking dot. It was frantic, desperate, not the kind of knock a neighbor makes when they want to borrow sugar. Danny turned off the stove and reached for the hunting rifle he kept by the door. Living alone in the wilderness had taught him to be careful. He opened the door slowly, rifle ready. What he saw made him freeze. A child stood on his porch. But she was not a human child. Her skin shimmered with a soft blue color, like moonlight on water. Her eyes were large and violet, filled with tears and terror. Her ears were pointed and delicate. She wore strange clothes made of a material Danny had never seen before. Silver blood dripped from a wound on her arm. She looked up at him and spoke in a trembling voice. The words came from a small device strapped to her wrist. "Please, help me. They are coming." Danny's mind raced. He had seen many strange things in his life. He had walked through war zones and survived explosions. But nothing had prepared him for this. An alien child on his doorstep. In rural Montana, the logical part of his brain told him this was impossible. The Marine part of his brain told him something else. This was a scared kid who needed help. Everything else could wait. "Get inside," he said. Now, the child rushed past him into the cabin. Danny closed the door and locked it. He set down his rifle and knelt in front of her. Up close, he could see she was shaking badly. Her violet eyes darted around the room like a trapped animal looking for escape. "Okay," Danny said softly. "Okay, you're safe now. What's your name?" "Lyrus," the child said through her translation device. "My name is Lyrus." "Lyrus, that's a nice name. I'm Danny. Now let me look at that arm." He guided her to the kitchen table and sat her down. The wound was deep but clean. The silver blood was strange, but it seemed to flow the same way human blood did. Danny grabbed his first aid kit from under the sink. He had learned field medicine in the Marines. He hoped it would work on whatever Lyrus was dot as he cleaned and bandaged her wound. He asked questions. "Where did you come from? Where are your parents?" Lyrus's eyes filled with fresh tears. "My ship. We were attacked. My guards put me in an escape pod and sent me away. The pod crashed in the forest. I saw your light. I walked toward it. Who attacked you?" "Assassins. They want me dead." She paused, her small hands gripping the edge of the table. "My mother is High Princess Venatrix of the Sithara Empire. She rules many worlds. There are people who hate her. They think if they kill me, they can hurt her, make her weak." Danny finished wrapping the bandage. His mind was still struggling to accept all of this. Alien empires, princesses, assassins. It sounded like something from a movie. But the child in front of him was real. Her fear was real. Her blood on his hands was real. "How old are you?" he asked. "In your years, I think 8 or 9. 8 years old. Old, running from killers across the stars. Alone on a strange planet." Danny felt something shift in his chest. The same feeling he had felt years ago when his unit found children hiding in bomb buildings overseas. The feeling that said, protect them, no matter what. "Listen to me, Lyrus," he said firmly. "You're going to be okay. I won't let anyone hurt you. She looked at him with confusion in her violet eyes. Why? You do not know me. You owe me nothing. Danny almost smiled. You knocked on my door. That makes you my guest. And where I come from, we protect our guests. Lyrus stared at him like he had said something impossible. Like the idea of a stranger helping her made no sense. Danny wondered what kind of galaxy she came from, where kindness was so rare. He made her eat some stew. She was hesitant at first, but hunger won. She ate slowly, watching Danny with careful eyes. The translation device on her wrist worked well. Her words came out clear, though her voice was still shaky. The assassins, Danny said. Will they follow you here? Lyrus nodded. They track escape pods. They will come. Danny stood and walked to the window. The night was dark outside. The forest stretched in every direction, a sea of black trees under a starless sky. For a moment, everything was peaceful dot. Then he saw them dot lights, coming down through the clouds. Not like planes or helicopters. These lights moved wrong. Too fast, too precise. They dropped straight down like stones falling through water. Danny's blood went cold. He turned to Lyrus. How many will there be? The hunting teams are usually 3. Cathrol bounty hunters. They are very dangerous. They have killed many. Her voice broke. We cannot fight them. We should run. Danny looked at the lights descending toward the forest. Then he looked at the injured child sitting at his kitchen table. Running was not an option. Not with her wound. Not in the dark. Not in his territory. He walked to his closet and pulled out his rifle, his pistol, and a box of ammunition. His hands moved with calm practice. This was what he knew. This was what he had trained for. Stay here, he told Lyrus. When I tell you, go to the basement. There's a hidden space behind the shelf. Get in and stay quiet. Don't come out until I come get you. But you cannot fight them alone, Lyrus said. They will kill you. Danny loaded his rifle and looked at her. His eyes were steady. Maybe, but I'm going to try anyway. Lyrus shook her head, fresh tears falling. I do not understand you. Why would you die for someone you just met? Danny opened the door and stepped onto the porch. The cold wind bit his face. The lights were getting closer. Because that's what humans do, he said, and he closed the door behind him. Danny stood on his porch and watched the lights descend. His rifle felt familiar in his hands. The weight of it calmed him. He had faced death before. In the desert. In the mountains overseas. He had learned that fear was useless. Fear made you slow. Fear made you dead. The lights touched down about 200 yards from the cabin. 3 figures emerged from the glow. Danny could see them clearly in the moonlight. They were tall, maybe 7 feet each. Their bodies were covered in dark armor that seemed to absorb light. Their faces were long and angular, with sharp teeth and yellow eyes that glowed like a predator's. Cathrol bounty hunters. Lyrus had been right to fear them. They walked toward the cabin with slow confidence. They moved like hunters who knew their prey could not escape. One of them carried a weapon that looked like a rifle but pulsed with strange energy. The other 2 had blades strapped to their backs. Danny took a breath and stepped off the porch. He walked to meet them in the open yard. The cold grass crunched under his boots. His heart was pounding, but his hands were steady. The lead hunter stopped 10 feet away. He tilted his head and looked at Danny like a wolf examining a rabbit. Human, the hunter said. His voice was deep and rough, translated by a device on his chest. We track an escape pod to this location. A child was inside. Sathara royal blood. Give her to us. Danny shook his head. Wrong house. I haven't seen any child. The hunter's yellow eyes narrowed. You lie. The pod landed nearby. Her trail leads here. I live alone, Danny said. "Been here all night. Maybe your tracker is broken." The lead hunter made a sound that might have been a laugh. Humans so primitive, so foolish. He stepped closer. "We will search your dwelling. If you resist, we will kill you. If you cooperate, you may live." Danny didn't move. "Go ahead and search. You won't find anything." The three hunters walked past him toward the cabin. Danny followed behind, his rifle still in his hands. They didn't seem worried about him. Why would they be? He was just one human with a primitive weapon. They had hunted across the galaxy. They had killed thousands inside the cabin. The hunters spread out. They overturned furniture. They smashed through closets. They tore apart the bedroom. Danny stood by the door and watched. His eyes tracked their movements. He studied their weapons. He noted how they communicated with small gestures. The basement door was hidden behind a heavy bookshelf. Lyrus was down there, in the secret space Danny had built for tornado season. The hunters walked past the bookshelf 3 times without noticing. After 20 minutes, the lead hunter returned to Danny. His yellow eyes burned with frustration. "The child is not here," he growled. "But she was. I can smell our fear." He grabbed Danny by the throat and lifted him off the ground. "Where did you hide her?" Danny's feet dangled in the air. The hunter's grip was like iron. He couldn't breathe. Spots appeared in his vision. "Tell me," the hunter hissed, "or I will burn every structure within miles. Every farm. Every home. I will make this land a graveyard." Danny's hand moved slowly, not toward his rifle, toward the wall beside him. There was a valve there, a release switch for the propane tank that powered his stove and heater. He had installed it himself last winter. His fingers found the valve. He turned it. The hiss of gas filled the cabin. The lead hunter's nostrils flared. His yellow eyes went wide. Danny smiled through the choking grip. "You shouldn't have brought energy weapons into a gas-filled room." The hunter's rifle was still warm from previous use. The energy core inside it pulsed with heat. When propane meets a heat source, it ignites. Danny had about 2 seconds. He used them to twist his body and slam his elbow into the hunter's arm. The grip loosened. Danny dropped and rolled toward the door. The explosion was massive. Fire erupted through the cabin. The walls blew outward. The roof collapsed in a shower of burning wood. Danny felt the blast wave hit him like a truck. He flew through the doorway and landed hard in the yard. Something in his chest cracked. Pain screamed through his body. He lay in the grass, staring at the burning cabin. His ears rang. His vision blurred. Smoke filled the night air. 2 of the hunters were dead. He could see their armored bodies in the flames, twisted and broken. The third hunter, the leader, crawled out of the wreckage. He was burned badly. His armor was cracked. Silver blood leaked from wounds across his body. The hunter looked at Danny with pure hatred. Then he looked at the burning cabin. His yellow eyes searched for signs of the child. He saw nothing but fire. "The child is dead," he rasped. "Burned in the fire. The mission is complete." He activated a device on his wrist. A beam of light shot down from the sky and lifted him away. Within seconds, he was gone. Danny lay in the grass and listened to his cabin burn. Every breath hurt. His ribs were broken. His skin was burned. He could taste blood in his mouth. But the hunter believed Lyrus was dead. He would report back to his masters. They would call off the search. At least for now, Danny crawled, inch by inch, through the grass, toward the burning structure. The heat was intense, but he kept moving. He had to reach the basement. The bookshelf had fallen during the explosion, revealing the basement door. Danny pulled it open and fell down the stairs. He landed hard on the concrete floor. The pain was unbearable. "Lyrus," he called weakly. "It's okay. They're gone." The hidden panel in the wall slid open. Lyrus emerged from the darkness. Her violet eyes were huge with fear. When she saw Danny lying on the floor, covered in blood and burns, she screamed, "No! No, no, no!" She ran to him and knelt beside him. Her small hands pressed against his chest. "You are hurt. You are badly hurt." "I'll be fine," Danny lied. His vision was fading. "Just need the rest." "You saved me," Lyrus whispered. Tears streamed down her blue face. "You almost died to save me." "Why?" Danny couldn't answer. The darkness was pulling him under. The last thing he saw was Lyrus's face above him, glowing faintly in the dim light of the burning cabin above. The last thing he heard was her voice. "Please don't die. Please. I don't want to be alone again." Then everything went black. 3 weeks passed slowly in the Montana wilderness. Danny survived, though he wasn't sure how. He woke up 2 days after the explosion in a tent made from salvaged materials. Lyrus had dragged him out of the basement and treated his wounds using supplies from a survival kit she found in the barn. The girl had never touched human medicine before, but she learned quickly. She cleaned his burns. She wrapped his broken ribs. She stayed awake through the night, watching over him. When Danny finally opened his eyes, Lyrus cried with relief. They moved into the barn, which had escaped the worst of the fire. Danny rebuilt what he could. His body healed slowly. The burns scarred over. The ribs mended. Each day he grew a little stronger. During those 3 weeks, something changed between them. Danny taught Lyrus about Earth. He showed her the birds that came to the yard each morning. He explained how rain formed and why leaves changed color in autumn. He told her stories about human history, about wars and peace, about the times humanity had destroyed itself and the times it had rebuilt from nothing. Lyrus listened to everything with wide, curious eyes. She asked endless questions. Why do humans keep animals as friends? Why do they make music that serves no purpose? Why do they build homes in dangerous places, like mountains and coastlines? Because we love those places, Danny explained. Even when they're dangerous. Maybe because they're dangerous. Lyrus shook her head. My people do not understand this. We calculate risk. We avoid danger. We do not love places that might kill us. Danny smiled. Then you're missing out. In return, Lyrus taught Danny about the galaxy. She told him about the Sithara Empire, which controlled over 1,000 worlds. Her mother, High Princess Venatrix, was fighting to change things. The old ways of the Empire were harsh. Conquered species were treated as lesser beings. Venatrix believed in reform, in equality, in peace through cooperation rather than force. But not everyone agreed. Venatrix's own brother, Prince Malachar, led a faction that wanted to return to the old ways. Expansion, conquest, domination. He saw Venatrix's reforms as weakness, and he saw Lyrus as a tool to be used against her mother. If I die, Lyrus said quietly one evening, my mother will be destroyed by grief. Malachar knows this. He thinks her love for me makes her weak. Danny put a hand on her shoulder. Love isn't weakness. It's the opposite. How can that be true? Because love makes people fight harder. It makes them sacrifice more. Your mother will burn down anyone who threatens you. That's not weakness. That's power. Lyrus thought about this for a long time. Danny could see the gears turning in her young mind. She was learning something that her people had forgotten. On the 22nd day, everything changed. Danny was outside chopping wood when the sky darkened. He looked up and felt his stomach drop. A ship was descending through the clouds. But this wasn't a small hunter vessel. This was enormous. A warship the size of a city block, silver and gleaming, blocking out the sun. He grabbed Lyrus and pulled her close. "Stay behind me." "Wait," Lyrus said. Her voice was strange. "Not afraid." Almost hopeful. "That is an Imperial vessel. That is my mother's flag on the hull." The ship landed in the valley below the barn. The ground shook with the impact. A ramp lowered from the belly of the vessel, and figures began to emerge. Soldiers in bright armor, attendants in flowing robes, and at the center of them all, a figure that made Danny's breath catch. She was 8 feet tall. Her skin was the same blue as Lyrus's, but darker, like deep ocean water. Her eyes were violet fire. Her face was beautiful and terrible, carved from ice and starlight. She wore armor of white and gold, and a crown of silver thorns sat upon her head. Princess Venatrix of the Sithara Empire had come to Earth. Her guards fanned out around the barn, weapons raised. Venatrix walked toward Danny with slow, measured steps. Her eyes never left his face. There was no warmth in her gaze. Only cold calculation. She stopped 10 feet away. "You are the human." Danny nodded. "I am. My daughter's emergency beacon led us here. My scouts report that Kethral hunters were dispatched to this planet. They reported the target eliminated in an explosion." She paused. "Yet my daughter lives. And you are wounded. Explain." Danny kept his voice steady. "The hunters came. I hid Lyrus. I blew up my cabin with them inside. They assumed she died in the fire and left." Venatrix stared at him. Her expression did not change. "You destroyed your home. You nearly killed yourself. For a child you had never met. A child of a species you did not know existed." "Yes. Why?" Danny looked at Lyrus, who stood beside him with tears in her eyes. Then he looked back at the princess. "Because she knocked on my door. That made her my responsibility." Silence fell over the valley. The soldiers shifted uncomfortably. The attendants whispered to each other. No one seemed to know how to respond. Venatrix's expression finally changed. Just slightly. A crack in the ice. "In my empire, obligation exists only between blood and contract. We do not protect strangers. We do not sacrifice for those who offer nothing in return. Your behavior is considered either madness or foolishness among my people." Danny shrugged. "Then your people have a lot to learn." For a long moment, Venatrix simply looked at him. Danny felt like he was being examined under a microscope. Every scar, every wound, every choice he had ever made. Then she did something no one expected. She bowed her head. Just slightly. Just for a moment. But it was enough. "You have my gratitude, human. And the gratitude of my house. This is not a small thing." She straightened and clasped her hands behind her back. "I offer you a choice. You may remain on this world with our thanks and a reward of substantial value. Or you may come with us as my daughter's official guardian and protector. The threat to her life is not ended. The assassins will try again. I need someone I can trust to keep her safe." Danny looked at the massive ship, at the alien soldiers, at the impossible sky. Then he looked at Lyrus, who watched him with desperate hope in her violet eyes. He thought about his quiet cabin that no longer existed, his peaceful life that had been turned upside down. Everything he had known was gone, but some things mattered more than peace. "I'll come with you," Danny said. Lyrus threw her arms around him and held on tight. Venatrix nodded once. "Then welcome to the Sithara Empire, Guardian. May you survive long enough to understand what you have agreed to." Danny watched the soldiers return to the ship. He watched the sun set behind the Montana mountains, painting the sky in gold and red. He wondered if he would ever see this world again. Then he took Lyrus's hand and walked toward the stars. The Imperial flagship was called the Throne of Stars. It was larger than any structure Danny had ever seen. Corridors stretched for miles. Thousands of crew members moved through its halls like blood flowing through veins. The technology was centuries beyond anything Earth possessed. Doors opened by thought. Food appeared from machines. Gravity shifted from room to room. Danny felt like a caveman walking through a modern city. Lyrus stayed close to him during those first days. She showed him how to use the translation systems, how to navigate the endless corridors, how to operate the basic technology. Without her, Danny would have been completely lost, but the crew watched him with cold eyes. To them, he was a primitive, a pet project of the princess. An embarrassing reminder that the galaxy contained species barely worth noticing. One officer, a tall Sithara male named Commander Talos, made his feelings clear. He was in charge of security aboard the flagship, and he viewed Danny's presence as an insult. "You are a guardian in name only," Talos said during their first meeting. "You cannot fight. You cannot shoot. You cannot even operate basic technology. You are a burden, not a protector." Danny kept his temper controlled. "Then teach me." Talos laughed. "Teach you? It would be faster to teach a rock to sing. Try me." Something in Danny's voice made Talos pause. The commander studied the human's scarred face, the steady eyes, the calm posture. He had seen many warriors in his centuries of service. This human had something. He wasn't sure what. "Very well," Talos said. "Report to Training Bay 7 tomorrow at dawn. We will see how long you last." The training was brutal. Talos pushed Danny to his breaking point and beyond. The weapons were strange, the tactics unfamiliar, the physical demands extreme. Danny failed constantly. He was thrown to the ground, shocked by training weapons, humiliated in front of other soldiers. But he kept getting up day after day, week after week. He learned to shoot the energy weapons. He learned to read alien tactical displays. He learned the fighting styles of a dozen different species. His body adapted. His mind absorbed everything like a sponge. Talos began to notice something strange. Humans learn differently than other species. Most beings, when they failed, became cautious. They avoided the action that had caused the failure. They protected themselves. Humans did the opposite. Each failure made Danny more determined. Each defeat taught him something new. He didn't avoid his weaknesses. He attacked them. He ran toward the things that hurt him until they stopped hurting. Fascinating, Talos admitted to Princess Venatrix one evening. The human has no natural advantages. He is weaker, slower, and less intelligent than our average soldier. Yet he improves faster than any recruit I have ever trained. He treats failure as fuel rather than punishment. Venatrix nodded slowly. Perhaps that is why his species has survived. They do not break when the universe pushes back. They push harder. Meanwhile, Danny had other concerns. During his time on the ship, he had noticed things. Whispered conversations that stopped when he approached. Officers who met in secret. Messages sent through encrypted channels. Something was wrong aboard the Throne of Stars. He shared his suspicions with Lyrus, who shared them with her mother. Venatrix listened carefully, then revealed the truth. "My brother Malachar has agents everywhere," she said. "The assassination attempt on Lyrus was just the beginning. He believes I am weak because I seek peace. He wants the Empire to return to its days of conquest. And he knows that if Lyrus dies, I will be destroyed by grief. It would give him the opening he needs to seize power. Then we need to find his agents," Danny said. "Root them out before they can strike again." Venatrix smiled coldly. "I know who most of them are, but I cannot act without proof. In imperial politics, accusations without evidence lead to civil war. I must wait for them to make a move." That move came sooner than anyone expected. The Throne of Stars hosted a grand ceremony to celebrate a diplomatic victory. Leaders from across the empire gathered in the Great Hall. Lyrus stood beside her mother on the raised platform, wearing ceremonial robes and a small crown. Danny stood in the crowd, dressed in the simple clothes of a palace servant. He had asked Venatrix to let him blend in. He could see more from the shadows than from the spotlight. The ceremony proceeded smoothly for hours. Speeches were made. Treaties were signed. Noble families presented gifts and pledged loyalty. Danny watched everything with careful eyes. Then he saw it, a servant near the platform, moving wrong. His steps were too precise. His eyes were too focused. He carried a tray of drinks, but his hand kept drifting toward his sleeve. Danny moved through the crowd. Slowly at first, then faster. The servant was getting closer to Lyrus. His hand slipped into his sleeve and withdrew something silver. A blade, thin as a needle, coated with something that glistened in the light. Poison. Danny broke into a run. He crashed through nobles and guards. People shouted in alarm. The servant raised the blade toward Lyrus. Danny threw himself. Between them, the blade sank into his chest. Pain exploded through his body. Not just physical pain. Something worse. Something that burned through his blood like fire. The poison was already spreading, already attacking his cells, already killing him. He fell to the ground. Above him, guards seized the assassin. Lyrus screamed his name. Venatrix shouted orders. The great hall erupted into chaos, but Danny could barely hear any of it. The poison was moving too fast. His vision was fading. His heart was slowing. He was dying, and there was nothing anyone could do. The last thing he saw was Lyrus's face above him, tears streaming down her blue cheeks. "Don't leave me," she begged. "Please, you promised to protect me. You can't protect me if you're dead." Danny tried to speak. Tried to tell her it would be okay. Okay. Tried to lie one more time. But the darkness took him before he could say a word. Danny floated in darkness for a long time. He was aware of voices sometimes, distant and muffled, like sounds heard through deep water. Lyrus crying. Venatrix issuing commands. Strange alien words he didn't understand. Machines humming and beeping around him. The poison was called the Void's Kiss. It was ancient and terrible, designed specifically to kill Sithara royalty. No one had ever survived it. The Imperial physicians tried everything they knew, but nothing worked. The poison adapted to every treatment. It learned and evolved and continued killing. Danny's human body fought back in ways the physicians had never seen. His immune system attacked the poison with desperate fury. His cells refused to die quietly. But it wasn't enough. Each hour, he grew weaker. Each day, he slipped further away. Lyrus refused to leave his bedside. She sat in a chair beside his medical pod, holding his hand through the transparent barrier. She talked to him constantly, even though he couldn't respond. She told him stories about her childhood. She described the world she had visited. She begged him to wake up. Venatrix visited every night after the ship's activities quieted. She stood at the foot of the medical pod and watched the human who had saved her daughter twice. Her face was unreadable, but her eyes were troubled. On the fifth night, she finally spoke to him. "I do not understand you," she said quietly. "Your species is young and primitive. You have no power in this galaxy. You have no obligation to us. Yet you risked your life for a stranger. You nearly died fighting hunters you could not defeat. And now you lie here, poisoned, because you threw yourself in front of a blade meant for my daughter." She paused. The machines beeped softly in the silence. "I asked you why, that first day on your world. You said it was because she knocked on your door. Because that made her your responsibility." Venatrix shook her head slowly. "I have ruled for 200 years. I have seen empires rise and fall. I have watched species destroy themselves over resources and power. But I have never seen anything like you." She leaned closer to the pod. "What is it that makes humans this way? What do you have that we have lost?" Danny couldn't answer. But somewhere in the darkness, he heard her. On the seventh day, Venatrix made a decision that shocked the entire empire. She contacted Earth. The message was simple. "A human citizen is dying aboard my vessel. He was poisoned while protecting my daughter. Your medical knowledge is different from ours. Perhaps together we can save him." Earth's response came within hours. The United Nations Emergency Council assembled. Medical teams volunteered. A shuttle was prepared. For the first time in human history, people from Earth would travel to an alien vessel. Dr. Carla Simmons led the team. She was 42 years old, a military trauma specialist with 20 years of experience. When she heard that a former Marine was dying on an alien ship, she didn't hesitate. She packed her equipment and boarded the shuttle. The journey took 18 hours. When Dr. Simmons stepped onto the throne of stars, she found herself surrounded by aliens who towered over her. But she didn't flinch. She walked straight to the medical bay with her team behind her. The Sithar physicians explained the poison. They showed her their failed treatments. They predicted Danny would be dead within 2 days. Dr. Simmons studied the data. Then she got to work. Human medicine was primitive by galactic standards, but it operated on different principles. Where Sithara medicine targeted diseases directly, human medicine supported the body's own defenses. Where aliens used complex chemical solutions, humans used simple combinations that the body could process naturally. Dr. Simmons worked alongside the Sithara physicians for 40 hours straight. They combined human antibodies with alien technology. They created a treatment that had never existed before. They injected it into Danny's dying body and waited. For 6 hours, nothing changed. Then Danny's heart rate stabilized. His breathing deepened. The poison spread stopped. Slowly, impossibly, he began to heal. He opened his eyes on the 9th day. Lyrus was asleep in the chair beside him, still holding his hand. Venatrix stood at the foot of the bed, her expression unreadable. Dr. Simmons sat nearby, exhausted but smiling. "Welcome back," Dr. Simmons said. "You gave us quite a scare." Danny's voice was weak and rough. "What happened?" "You almost died," Venatrix said. "The poison should have killed you. Our medicine could not stop it. But this human physician found a way." She paused. "She combined your species' knowledge with ours, created something new, something that had never existed before." Danny looked at Dr. Simmons. "Thank you." She shrugged. "Just doing my job. Besides, Marines don't leave their own behind." Lyrus woke up and saw Danny's eyes open. She burst into tears and threw her arms around him, forgetting the machines and wires and protocols. For a long moment, they simply held each other. Later, much later, there was a ceremony. The entire fleet gathered in the Great Hall. Representatives from a dozen worlds attended via hologram. Earth sent its first official ambassador, a nervous diplomat named Dr. Kevin Moore, who stood among giants and tried not to look terrified. Venatrix stood before the assembled crowd and spoke. "For 1,000 years, the Sithara Empire has measured worth by power and advantage. We conquer. We calculate. We advance our interests above all else. This is our way. This is what we believed made us strong." She paused and looked at Danny, who stood beside Lyrus in a place of honor. "But this human taught me something we had forgotten. He protected my daughter without expecting reward. He nearly died for a child he had just met. And when asked why, he gave an answer that I still do not fully understand. Because she knocked on his door. Because that made her his responsibility." The crowd was silent. Every eye was fixed on the princess. This is not logic as we know it. It is not strategy. It is something else. Something older. Something that humans carry in their blood and bones. Something that makes them risk everything for strangers. I do not know what to call it, but I know that the galaxy is darker without it. She raised her hand in a formal gesture. Today, I declare humanity a protected species under imperial law. Any act of aggression against Earth will be treated as an attack on the Empire itself. And I invite humanity to send ambassadors to our worlds, to share their knowledge, and to teach us what they know. The crowd murmured in shock. This was unprecedented. A primitive species, raised to protected status in a single day. Venatrix ignored the whispers. She turned to Danny. As for you, human, I offer you a place in my house. You will be adopted into Sithara nobility as my daughter's sworn guardian. You will stand beside her for as long as you live. This is my gift to you, in thanks for what you have done. Danny bowed his head. I accept. That night, Danny stood on the observation deck alone. Earth hung in the viewport before him, blue and green and beautiful. His home, his world, the place he had thought he would never see again. Lyrus found him there. She stood beside him and followed his gaze. You could go home now, she said. My mother would arrange it. You have earned that right. Danny looked at the planet that had made him, at the mountains of Montana, invisible from this distance, but still burned into his memory, at everything he had left behind. Then he looked at Lyrus, at the child who had knocked on his door on a cold autumn night, at the girl who had dragged him from a burning building and refused to let him die, at the alien princess who called him family now. He put his hand on her shoulder and smiled. I am home, kid. Lyrus smiled back, and together they watched the stars.